Dr. K.S. Ramakrishnan is working as an assistant professor, School of Education, Tamil Nadu Open University, Chennai 15. He has been teaching science education, environmental science, educational technology, and research methodology in various colleges of education and Tamil Nadu Open University for the past 9 years. He has guided so many M.Ed, M.Phil, and PhD students. His current research areas are environmental education, educational technology, and media and communication. He has conducted various workshops on ICT usage in education, Wiki Educator, e-content development, and education research methodology. He had attended many online workshops on Moodle, learning analytics. He has published 6 books and many articles in national and international journals of repute. He regularly gives plenary and keynote speeches on environment and ICT related issues at various national and international conferences. He has delivered 28 episodes of the program Pudiyodor Ulagam at All India Radio, Chennai, related to various new developments in science and technology.
Welcome to UGC CEC program. In this episode of Environmental Science, we shall discuss about the environmental impact of mining, and the contents are as follows. We shall discuss about the environmental impact of mining, sustainable mining, various types of mining, the environmental protection and closure, and the restoration of mined sites. So, these are all the topics we shall discuss today. Now, let us see how the mining is impacting the environment. See, first of all, it is affecting the air, the particulates from surface mining and transportation, noxious and toxic fumes from smelting. So, when the mining is happening, it produces a lot of particulate matter, dust, and when they are transported, and that itself is causing a lot of air pollution, and during the smelting process also carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and so many other complex compounds are produced, and all these are causing the air pollution. And water, the runoff from mines and waste disposal, because when we are cleaning the ore or the material, then it causes a lot of runoff and the waste material, and when they are running off and they are joining with the water bodies, and therefore, they cause water pollution. And then the land pollution, the dumping of tailings and processed waste, disruption of agriculture, forestry and recreation, and it is disturbing the land also, and human heavy metals and particulates, and therefore, we shall say that the mining is disturbing the air, water, land, and the whole atmosphere and the human beings as well. And now, let us discuss what is sustainable mining. Actually, the mining, it is not that we can totally throw out mining, because we are depending on the metals in every day to day life, and therefore, we have to depend upon the mining, and at the same time we have to protect our environment also, and therefore, that we are coining the word sustainable mining. Now, let us see what is sustainable mining. See, the miner of the 21st century must know how to monitor emission, how to protect the environment, how to restore a mine back to other uses, and how to get along with the neighbors, and therefore, the current miners have to be very cautious about all these factors. That means, they have to monitor the emission, and they have to get along with the neighbors, and they have to close the mine after the mining operation is over, and all these are the fundamental duties of a miner of the 21st century. They were not imposed during the 21st or 19th century, but now they are particularly important. And now, the mining today is a balance of 3 elements: the techno-economic issue, environmental issue, and the socio-political. As we have already discussed, the mining depends on depending upon the technology, the economy, the environment, the sociology and the politics. And so, all these are the fundamental elements which are deciding the mining operations. And now, let us see what are the various types of mining. And first of all, we shall discuss about the open pit mining. And in open pit mining, the machines dig holes and remove ores, sand, gravel and stone, and the toxic groundwater can accumulate at the bottom. And so, open pit means the mine is open, and that is gradually that we are nearing the central place where the ore is available, and it is dug, and from there the ore is taken and it is carried away to the surface, and that is at times when water is accumulated, then that water is accumulated at the bottom and it may disturb the mining operations also. And the open pit mining is used with evenly distributed minerals, terraced, so men and machines can move about. So, it is an open place and therefore, the men and machine can move openly, and copper, iron, gold, diamonds, coal and all these are that is obtained by the open pit mining. And the quarries or the open pits, they are for clay, gravel, sand, stone, and for example, the limestone, granite, marble, slate, etc. So, all the quarries they are coming under the open pit mining. And say what are the demerits of the open pit mining? Huge amounts of rock are removed to get small amount of minerals, habitat loss, aesthetic degradation and acid drainage, and the abandoned pits filled with toxic water. Actually, a lot of sand or the rock that is removed from the mine, and for getting a small amount of mineral, and so it is not economical. And second thing, after the mining is over, the pit is filled with water and therefore, it is causing the environmental problem and it is a habitat loss also. And look at the diagram, see these are all the various stages of mining, and from the periphery gradually that the operation are centering towards the center, and therefore, it is the place where the ore is generally available, and that is taken to the various places for processing, and therefore, this is the example for the open pit mining. And the second one, that is area strip mining, and the earth movers strips away overburden and giant shovels remove the mineral deposit and often leaves highly erodible hills of rubble called spoil banks. So, in this earth movers are stripping away the overburden. That means, suppose if at a particular place the material or the ore is available, then first of all that strips are made and the overburden that is removed away, and then the shovels they are taking the ore. And what is the major problem of this? After the mining is over, the huge amount of the waste material and they are erodible hills of rubble, they are called the spoil banks. And so, this is the disadvantage of this kind of mining. And generally it is used for coal, oil sands, sand, gravel, and it destroys the natural communities over large areas and triggers erosion. And the acid drainage, that means the sulphide minerals form sulphuric acid and flow into waterways. And now, you look at the diagram, and here these are all the strips, and in between the strips the mineral ore that is available, and therefore, we are making the strip and from there the mineral ore that is taken away, and therefore, it is called the area strip mining. And after the mining is over, all the rubble and they are highly erodible and that will cause severe problem. See, look at the diagram, the acid drainage, and actually it is a mining area, and here the contaminated water, because during the mining sulphur dioxide, carbon dioxide and other obnoxious chemicals are released, and when they are joining with water, then they are causing the sulphuric acid and all, and therefore, the water is acid water and nothing will grow into it, and that is a disadvantage, or that is the environmental hazard of the mining. And the third one, that is a contour strip mining. It is used on hilly or mountainous terrain. Unless the land is restored, a wall of dirt is left in front of a highly erodible bank called high wall. So, then generally this method that is followed in the mountains, and look at the diagram. Actually, it is a mountain area and it is a bench and the pit is dug, and these are all the coal deposits, and so the coal deposit is taken away and that is removed. And now, what is the problem? After the mining or during the mining also, a lot of dust that is forming on this, and this point is called the high wall, and that is under that there is a spoil banks. That means, these are the waste material or the rubble, and therefore, at any time, any point of time they may erode, and so this is a problem with the contour strip mining. And the fourth one, that is the mountaintop removal. The machinery removes the tops of mountains to expose coal. The resulting waste rock and dirt are dumped into the streams and valley below. So, in this the mountain top, that is totally removed, and from there the coal is extracted, and all the rubble that is thrown away into the valley. And so, this is the major problem with this kind of mining. And see, here the top that is totally removed, and the rubble that is thrown into the valleys. And then comes the surface mining, and in surface mining it accesses deep pockets of a mineral through tunnels and shafts. A depth of 2.5 miles, that means a deep pit is dug up to 2.5 miles, and then through the deep pockets, the tunnels and shafts, through that the mineral is taken away, and zinc, lead, nickel, tin, gold, diamonds, phosphate, salt and coal, these are extracted by this method, and it is the most dangerous form of mining. And the dynamite blast, collapsed tunnels are the major drawbacks of this kind of mining. And the toxic fumes and coal dust, acid drainage, polluted groundwater, sinkholes, damaged roads, homes, etc. And therefore, the subsurface mining, that is one of the most dangerous mining because of all these factors. And you look at, and here the main shaft and the ventilation, and therefore, through this shaft the mineral that is extracted to the top, and so many times when the shaft that is broken away or that collapse, then all the people who are mining, all will be trapped inside, and therefore, it is one of the most dangerous kind of mining, and these are all the coal seams, and therefore, they are taken away by this method. And for air circulation, the ventilation pits are there. In case when the ventilation pits they are closed due to some reasons, then these people inside they will suffocate, and by that also there is a human loss, and most of the time the losses, the human loss, that happens in this kind of mining. Let us have a short break. Welcome back from break, and then comes the placer mining. Actually, it is happening for a long time. Actually, through the streams and all, the sand, gravel and water, that is processed by the human beings, and then the small traces of gold, silver, etc., and they are taken away. So, this is called the placer mining. It is using the running water. The miners sift through material in river beds, and it is used for gold and gems, and the debris washed into streams makes them uninhabitable for wildlife, and it disturbs the stream banks and causes erosion and harms riparian plant communities. So, in this kind of mining, the water banks, the water coming through the banks, and that is processed by human being directly, and it is generally used for some small traces of gold and gems. So, what are the major drawbacks of this kind of mining? Generally, that water, the waste water, that is not usable for any other purpose, and it is disturbing the small animals and plants also, and it is disturbing the banks also, because after some time gradually the bank that will go inside or that will curve in, and therefore, that is a major problem. And so, this is the placer mining, and then comes the solution mining, and the resources in a deep deposit are dissolved in a liquid and siphoned out, and salts, lithium, boron, bromine, potash, copper and uranium, they are extracted by this method, and it is less environmental impact than the other method, and less surface area is disturbed. Acids, heavy metals, uranium can accidentally leak. So, that is one problem. Actually, in the solution mining, the particular ore that is dissolved, actually the water is injected into it, and in the water that mineral ore that is dissolved, and the dissolved water is taken away, and therefore, it needs a very small amount of space, and it is not having major problems associated, very less amount of space is required, but one small problem, sometimes the uranium, heavy metals and all, they may accidentally leak, and therefore, that may create some environmental hazards. And now, what are the mining impact? In what way that they are impacting? The metal ores are smelted or treated with potentially toxic chemicals to extract the desired metal, and therefore, always the mining operations are creating pollution. And the gold processing, the gold is treated with the cyanide, and that is producing gold cyanide, and it is soluble, and the hydrogen cyanide gas, it is very toxic. And sometimes the gold is added with mercury, and it is making the gold amalgam, and the mercury is a very highly poisonous material, and therefore, in either the cyanide method or the amalgamation method, the extraction of gold is causing some pollution or some hazards. And then comes the hyperaccumulation. The hyperaccumulator plants accumulate inordinate amounts of one or more trace elements in their above ground biomass. See, already that we have discussed this. See, when these minerals and materials, they are going into the atmosphere or the land or water, that is grasped by the plants, and therefore, they are accumulating in the plant bodies, and therefore, when the animals are eating the plants, that minerals are getting into the animals, and therefore, that is called the bioaccumulation, and some trace elements that is accumulating. And the hyperaccumulator species may accumulate one or more range of trace elements that currently includes nickel, manganese, zinc, cadmium, thallium, copper, cobalt and arsenic. And so, from plants they are transferred into the animals, and therefore, ultimately that they are reaching the human beings also. And the hyperaccumulation may have applications in mining in the future also. And now, let us discuss about the mining waste. What shall we do? The subsidence is a phenomenon where the surface collapses directly above the subsurface mine, and many times the subsidence, that is the phenomenon where the upper terrace that collapse, and therefore, all the people inside they are getting trapped. And spoils are the unwanted rock and other waste left over after mining either on the surface or the subsurface. So, the unwanted rock material, that is left behind. And the tailings are the materials left over after the process of separating the valuable fraction from the worthless fraction of an ore. So, once the mineral ore that is extracted, the remaining material that is called the trailing, and we have to dispose the trailing also. And what are the precautions that we have to take? Before mining, we have to plan for the neighborhood. During operation, we have to protect the environment, and after operation, we have to plan for closure, mitigate or restore the site, sustain the communities, and sustain the company. And so, these are all some things that we have to keep into our mind before, during, and after the mining process. Now, the environmental impact of mining, the acid mine drainage, the erosion and sedimentation, the cyanide and other toxic release, dusty emission, habitat modification, and surface and groundwater contamination. So, these are all the major impact of the mining. And now, how can we solve this problem? We shall build stable waste dumps to minimize the erosion, divert and collect water flows, revegetate the slopes, that means reducing the slope, or cover the dump, glacial till or soil. So, by all these measures that we can minimize the hazards happening due to the mining operations. And we shall build the stable tailing dams, treat water and prevent ponding, and remove the buildings and flood fill pits. So, you look at the diagram, actually it is made by the Antamina tailings. Actually, the tailing water that can be converted into good water for some proper use, and therefore, in that way the dam is constructed by the tailings. And this is the reclamation at Bluebell mine. Actually, once upon a time it could have been a mine, but now it has been reclaimed, and now that it is a reclamation site, and all the trees and forest that has been developed after the mining operation is over, and therefore, now it is a very good place for recreation. And here the island copper pit that is flooding with ocean, the water from sea water or marine water, and so it is converted into some good purpose, and the pit is flooded with the sea water to create a meromictic lake of 3 layers. The top layer is clean water, the middle layer a reactor for surface ARD, and the bottom that will retain the precipitated solid. So, it is flooded with marine water, and then it is used for some other purpose, and it is a deep sea disposal of tailing. The tailings can be disposed into sea, and actually the sea water that is taken and that is mixed, and then that is disposed deep into the sea around some 150 meters, and therefore, this is another method of disposing the tailings. And this was once upon a time a mining site, and now it is reclaimed slopes. Actually, there are so many slopes are there, and all these slopes has been converted into a good forest or the grasslands. And once the water is reclaimed, all the animal habitats like fish, all this will automatically come, and they will make it as a habitat. There are some problems of restoration of mined site. Even on restored sites, impacts may be severe and long lasting, and the complex communities are simplified, forest, wetlands, etc., are replaced by grasses. That means, it is not possible that the previous mine or the previous environment will go, that is come back, because it is not possible. But anyhow, that complexity will come down, and now new habitats, new plants and new animals will start residing there, and therefore, it is not always possible that the mine site will go back to its historic position. And the essential symbioses are eliminated and often not restored. Symbiosis means there is a connection between the plants and animals, so that exact symbiosis will not return, and therefore, it may not restore the previous condition. And water can be reclaimed, and the heavy metals can be removed, and the pH value, the acidity or base, that pH value can be moderated, and the mine site may be converted into a forest site also. All these are possible, but the main point is that it is not possible to restore into the previous condition. Now, let us summarize what we have discussed so far. In this episode, the environmental impact of mining, sustainable mining, various types of mining, the environmental protection and closure, and the restoration of mined site, all these have been discussed in detail. Now, let us have some questions. The first question: write the elements of sustainable mining. The second: write some common types of mining and the ores mined by this method. Today that we have discussed so many types of mining, and so what are the common types and what are the ores mined by these methods. The third one: what is acid drainage and how can it be mitigated. The fourth: define the terms high walls and spoil banks. And the fifth one: define hyperaccumulation and how can it be avoided. So, with that we are coming to a closure. Thank you.